next panel is really about creating content, creating video content for businesses, for brands, and how it's paying for itself or not. And that's sort of the dilemma that we're all facing as we try to execute on this awesome vision. Oh, nice arrangement. So I know, I'm like, wow. It's bad for the pictures. It's really, Anastasia would have a lot to say about that.
You have to switch with
this isn't working.
Yeah.
We could say something about the black and the colors. There's so much to say about this panel. Okay, so to start, thank you guys for being here and for holding up the late afternoon. I really appreciate it. Can we go across and one sentence about your company and one sentence about what you do there? Starting with you, Stone.
My name's Stone Roberts. I am the SVP of Global Video Strategy at Refinery 29. We are a media company dedicated to populating content and distributing content globally for millennial women.
My name's Doreen Lorenzo, and I'm the co-founder of Vidlet, which is a platform that mobilizes video insights, so it allows you to get qualitative and ethnographic research through your mobile phone.
Hi, I'm Brian Hunt. I work for Believe Entertainment Group. I run the studio and development there. We're a studio and a production company working primarily in digital.
I'm Liza Pigram. I'm the head of strategy and development at VIMBY, which stands for Video in My Backyard. We are Mark Burnett's content studio, and we focus on real people storytelling. And one of the reasons why we're called VIMBY, Video in My Backyard, is our production infrastructure. We have filmmakers in over 80 markets in the U.S. So.
Great. Thank you. So I think, after all the tech and, crazy innovations that we've seen in the last day and a half, a little bit more, I wanted to get into art, because we don't get to talk about that very often, and we've seen all of this data and what consumers want and what's working for brands and how advertisers can participate. But for you all, in a world of digital where everything is trackable and clickable and accountable, what do you think about actually making art?
I think we can't lose sight of that. And I think we all love technology, but we can't lose sight of making art. To me, there's always got to be a balance, right? Because I think it's data and we need it, but you can't lose sight of the essence of the human. We're all humans, and I think the storytelling is all part of that.
Brian?
Yeah, I agree. I wonder if Jackson Pollock would like an algorithm to tell him which colors he should use to choose across his palette. I think at the end of it, it's hard because the gates are open, which is a great thing, but I still think there's an expertise and a skill set, and storytelling has certain elements to it that, whether it's being done by kids in a desert or on a university or whether it's being done by J.J. Abrams, there are still certain tenets that can separate quality from not.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I think art elicits emotion, and I think that's what's key in storytelling, and it's key what's successful video content is really tapping into people's emotions, whether it's through humor or content that speaks to them in a relevant way in terms of their community and their lifestyle and what they do. But it really is about tapping into emotion, and that's what art does.
I think art with science is maybe more powerful than just art alone.
So all Stone wants to talk about is innovating with new platforms. We're going to get to that.
Oh, no. I honestly do. I mean, I have deep respect for creators. I am a creator at my core. I grew up as a creator, and I think as science and technology have evolved with creative tools to make artists potentially more creative, there's a beautiful fusion between the two, and I don't think in today's landscape you one can exist without the other, but I think they're more powerful in tandem.
So we a little stacked the deck on this panel because everyone up here has had the luxury of working on very successful and very large video plus TV initiatives. So the normal challenges of scraping together, the opportunity to create, you guys luckily don't have to worry about as much. And I think in this world that's so driven by tech and so exciting and fast, what's next? Like we're in a arguably short form world. Do you ever think, as an extension of art, where does long form fit in?
I believe what's next is probably less content that's better. I believe we're flooded at this point with content, and I think that the artists and the creators that genuinely have pure creative talent will ultimately rise to the top, and we'll see more of a collection of great stuff and less noise.
I think it totally depends on the platform. I think you have to think of the consumer and the user. So there is a place for long form where people are wanting that and wanting to sit down and watch. If they're in their social feeds, they're not necessarily going to give you that time because they don't have it. So what we find is critical is really what's happening in the first 3, 7, 11 seconds of a video. If we can get them then, we might keep them for 2 or 3 minutes. So after that, again, in that short form space. But I think it really depends on the platform.
Yeah, there's not the proliferation of short form hasn't done anything to detract from long form. If anything, there's more long form content than there's ever been. There's more hour dramas, there's more sitcoms, and you can't even find a movie that's less than 2 hours.
There's more Netflix.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, but I think right now all the short form, the stuff that's being made in the same vein as long form, as in that more traditional, I'm making a series, I'm trying to create a franchise. Those, I think you'll start to see some of those make their way through the woodwork a little bit. It's crowded right now. And you'll see short form brands start to rise a little bit more than they currently do.
I always don't think you can have, there's like one thing and that's what it is. So short form is the new, it's kind of the new thing. It's newer than long form. So therefore, is that the only thing that's going to be? No. I mean, if it's a great story, if it hits the emotion, if it gets to the consumer, people are going to watch it.
So often we talk about creating for the device. We have clients all the time that say, we have to do everything in video. We have to be on this platform, this platform, like ship our video out, find a way to, populate across all these places. And, we look at them and say, who is your audience? Are they really like on an Xbox? Are they really, does an OTT app make sense for them? Like all these things we have to ask about the audience. But do you guys think that your stories are limited to devices or limited to audiences? Or how do you look at that as from a sort of decision-making process on the creative side?
I mean, for us, it's platform first. Not necessarily device first. I think device plays a role, but it's no secret that mobile is like the dominant consumption method. So most platforms play into that mentality. So it's platform first versus device first for us.
Liza?
I think for us, because we don't do distribution and we're really on the creative development side, we're more platform agnostic. So, we're seeing even from the linear space to the digital space, a lot of blending. And in the linear space, the beginnings of wanting to use longer form narrative versus 30-second commercial pods. So I think there really is a blend, and it is platform agnostic.
Brian, I know you guys are TV, digital.
Yeah, and we change the creative based on that and based on which platform we're talking to, actually. So maybe at the core there's a story or a premise or a concept, but if I know, if it's a comedy, for example, a scripted comedy, we'll have a very different conversation with probably full screen versus CISO versus Amazon. There'll be 3 different conversations, and how we shape the format, what ancillary elements to those stories. Are there additional videos? Are there ways for the audience to interact? Those are totally different conversations that do affect the creative.
Yeah, I should say format is critical based on your platform. So
once you've got the platform nailed and you have the story nailed, who's paying for the content?
Pepsi?
in our case,
It's always Pepsi. They pay for a lot of video.
in our case, it's the brands.
Brands.
Definitely the business, yeah.
I mean, the large majority of the funding is brands, yes.
So none of you said that consumers
I
are
was
paying.
actually I would say distributors. For us, we're looking for I much rather work directly with a distributor than with a brand. If we could work with the brand to develop for them or to integrate them in, but
And can you just explain what that looks like? So when you're talking about distributor, you're talking about a partner that's running your content, right? So just walk everybody through what that is.
Sure, exactly. Whether it's Comedy Central or if it's a Refinery 29, they would deficit fund a series and ideally sell advertising against it, or we would help sell advertising against it. To me, that's a very easy way. We're making content strictly for the audience of that platform. Brands is a whole other story. You're making content for a brand, and then you're trying to make sure that it also works with a broader audience where that content's going to be distributed, or that audience that distributor, whether it be Facebook or Snapchat, whoever, they have that audience that'll align with the content you're creating.
So Liza, brands are your specialty.
Yeah.
Brands are VIMBY's specialty. And, we just have spent a lot of time talking about Facebook, and we'll get to Facebook Live later, but just from the Facebook Kleenex campaign that you guys did, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because arguably it was very emotional, gut-wrenching at some point content, but was totally driven by a brand. So how did that work? And,
Yeah, I mean, it
and
was
for
really-
people that haven't seen it, we'll just start with, has anyone or who has seen the sort of long-form creative for Kleenex in which a man who has been hurt, injured, comes home and has a dog who's also injured?
He has a handicapped dog.
Handicapped dog and handicapped vet. What?
90 million people saw it.
How does it? So it won a bunch of awards last year,
None of them are
and
here.
90 million views on Facebook, and was much talked about. And we should have played it.
Yeah.
Should have played it. But this incredible thing that really made its way across Facebook, and people were talking about sort of this amazing story that had a whole brand campaign behind it, but that was very invisible to the end user. I felt.
Yeah, I mean, and that process was really interesting because it was a series of 29 videos, and we've had other, great hits since then. But it was driven by both Facebook and the brand Kleenex. And when we started the process, although they saw it as long-form storytelling, they also saw it as 90 seconds of opportunity for product integration. So it was a really tough process to get them to understand that we could tell the brand story without necessarily having someone pull out the Kleenex all the time. And perhaps it was really what the viewer was going through and the emotional aspect of the viewer's reaction and their need for Kleenex would be sufficient, and that we wouldn't have to actually have the product in it. So that was sort of a lengthy process, and especially when you're dealing with very traditional CPG and they have all these metrics that they want to meet in terms of the creative development process, they were pretty skeptical. So, but as we have moved on, we have definitely found great success there. But it's all been really about keeping the stories incredibly authentic and really telling real people's stories and not trying to manufacture.
And I think. Go ahead,
No,
Doreen.
I was going to say I think what's happening, though, is this transition period that's going on where, brands used to do things a certain way. Mm-hmm. And I think they're learning along with everyone on what works. And so it's testing this to go out and see, hey, this authentic behavior actually is something people want right now. We can see it in the public, and this is something that people are reacting to. And that was not something that was done before.
And we can thank ad blockers for a little bit of that, right? Like all the brands had to get a little bit more creative as everyone's shutting off.
It's also
their
just
pre-roll.
it's just different mediums. I mean, they worked a certain way. They had all these metrics, and they worked a certain way for so many years. I mean, you're all immersed in this. This is relatively new for a lot of people.
Well, and I think the big difference also is there's a lot invested in a 30-second commercial that once you broadcast out, you're done. When you're in the digital space, obviously, you can optimize, edit, refine, and you have that opportunity. So it feels it's a little not as scary.
Stone, you guys do this so well. I mean, Refinery 29 is creating these amazing series that have brands behind them, almost always, and very authentic for, you know, younger women who look at this as true content and don't see the ad behind it and don't really understand who's supporting it or really think about who's paying for the content, but it's amazing. So do you want to just talk about how you guys go through that process? Like, what happens when you're creating a series and it needs someone to write the check to go live?
That's a lot of questions. I think authenticity to us is first and foremost, like we put our audience first in terms of everything we create, and we try very hard to maintain a line that if it's not right for them, it's not right for us, and therefore, if it's not right for them and it's not right for us, there's really no value to the brand. So they being our audience really serve as like the epicenter for everything we build upon. And I think, you know, it's amazing up here because we all maybe on paper appear to be doing like a pretty similar thing, but I mean, knowing Brian, speaking to Lisa last night and just getting to know you, it's like there's so much variety in how we all do what we do. But when it comes to us, it's essentially like finding the chemistry. I mean, there's so much incoming quantity in terms of proactive and reactive attention from brands as they reach out to us. We have a sea of content, both in the video and editorial and photo and design and experiential sides that's like always happening. And essentially it's just about matchmaking and finding that right piece of art that's right for our audience and the brand that whose kind of DNA and mission at that time aligns with what we're doing, packaging that up into a nice little, you know, box and like pulling it all together. It's a lot of like packaging is kind of the most, to me, like the most creative element in what we do, because there's so many wonderful pieces of the puzzle, and when you put together the perfect package, you see things come to life in a much like broader way than they would without like one of those pieces associated.
And arguably the least executed amongst many big media companies that we know, right? That packaging piece is often what gets them into this world of, oh my God, I made the show and I spent all this money on it, and now I don't know if anyone's going to watch it.
Yes, it's important.
Great. Doreen, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the B2B world that you live in and how that ecosystem works? It's slightly different, obviously, and
it is. I mean,
still very relevant to this creative story. That
it is. I mean, we're creating. I mean, what we're doing is we're capturing really people's opinions, right? And that's helping brands shape what they do and how they make products and services. And I think, as we've seen over the last day and a half, I mean, there's tons of ways to go collect data. There's no shortage of data. But at the end of the day, you still have to understand the person, and seeing a person in their own environment, having them really deliver to you something that you can resonate with makes a big difference. And what, you know, I come out of the design world. I've played in that world for so many years. And what I saw was, you know, brands were not spending money going out and doing this qualitative and ethnographic research because it cost money. You know, they could get the data, they could do a survey, they could do focus group, and they felt like they had the information, but they were really missing. And then they couldn't understand why their products didn't take off, right? And they were really missing understanding the human. And so we wanted to really create something where they could see these people in their real world. They can see how they react. They can see what their lives are like. And they can do it easily, quickly, and inexpensively. So there's no excuse anymore. And it's really made a huge difference with a lot of businesses.
So going to that sort of immediacy of feedback, we'll go ask the audience. How many people watched or have heard of the exploding watermelon live on Facebook? And how many people watched them wrap rubber bands around the watermelon until it exploded on a Friday afternoon? Not bad. Okay, so from that, also how many people have heard of the Chewbacca lady? Star Wars always wins. Okay, so those two videos, there's real time, obviously. It's happening. You see immediate metrics on how many people are there. This is a whole new social world of Facebook. video, which is kind of awesome for all of us. What does that mean for content? Like, obviously, the price point for creating content like that is relatively low, almost free in some cases, but attracting a huge audience, and which is going to ultimately be valuable to an advertiser or a brand. So, how does that fit into your world of authentic storytelling?
I mean, for me, I think it taps into what I was saying earlier, which is it's about emotion. I mean, I think that those two videos, one of them, the Chewbacca lady, it was the sheer joy and laughter that it just made you feel so good, and it was fun. And the watermelons, it's about the anticipation and the mess and all of that. So I think it really comes back to, those are just very short pieces of storytelling, but they're still really about tapping into emotion, and that's what creates the shareability about it, because people can connect with it and they want to share. So I think those are just examples. And yes, of course, in terms of budget, they are extraordinarily efficient. But there's a place for longer form, more expensive. I don't think that all content is going to be, the short snippets like this. I think that there's room for both. But I think the common thread is certainly the emotional aspect of it.
Brian, I saw you on the watermelon day, so
You saw me not watching it.
Saw you not watching it. I wasn't watching it either.
Yeah. It's another device. It's another platform, and I was just talking about how I still don't totally have a handle on Facebook Live with Stone, and we were talking a little about where it could go. But I agree that there's other types of storytelling, whether it's scripted or more traditional, are not going to go away. And for a lot of creators, and if you want to get a little bit more real right now, like how are people making money making content? There's only going to be so many exploding watermelons that yield dollars versus, for lack of a better example, Big Bang Theories.
Or House of Cards.
Or House of Cards, right.
Don't you think I think we have to think about, because I feel like we keep talking about things being didactic, it's this or that. I think there's just an and I think we'll keep seeing a lot more and, as people get out and explore, and it's opened up to the world, right? These are just people doing stuff. We'll see more and, which will influence more storytelling and how we do things, and that's the good thing.
So Facebook Live, obviously very ethereal, like it happens and it's over. Snapchat also. I want to talk about Snapchat, but first I want to make sure that we cover audience questions. So questions from the audience. These fabulous creators. Where is my live person? There he is. He's mulling. He asked about live earlier. And as a millennial from MIT is unconvinced that live appointment viewing is going to actually take off, which was a great question earlier.
Any questions?
Aha! I prepped him. You can ask the same question if you like. New audience.
Hello, audience. So I guess in an industry as creative as yours, I'm always very taken aback by how much pressure there is to follow trends. So rubber bands are placed on watermelons, and suddenly you're asked to find the next exploding watermelon. And I used to work at BuzzFeed, and my observation was that the key to success isn't following, but just mimicking the testing process of experimenting quickly and iterating. So I'm just curious, how free are you to do that, to try and find the next exploding watermelon versus trying to replicate it once it's already happened?
I mean, we've been doing live through YouNow and Periscope and Meerkat for, I don't know, at least probably up until the Facebook announcement, at least a year. And I think, in everything we're talking about, we approach things with tiers. So watermelon is a stunty format that's probably one and done, and it's quick and it's cheap. And those ideas, as simple as they are harder on the ideation front than one might assume. And on the other side of that, we're using live to cover rallies at the Supreme Court, and we're taking live to the RNC DNC. And I think what we see, I think I went to F8 with Zuckerberg, and I think the fact that that organization is putting so much into this It's not going anywhere anytime soon, but I don't think it's necessarily something that's a medium yet, but more of a tool. Like our audience, and we see like the generation we're speaking to, like they are keen on being connected globally, and by having the ability to live stream wherever you are on the planet through this new kind of announcement, it's like a connection tool versus a storytelling tool. And I think the connection leads and the story follows, and however you choose to deliver that story is up to your creative devices, but the range it offers you is super significant and awesomely powerful. So to answer your question, I think we're very free to experiment. We experimented with live for a long time, and then Facebook made the announcement. We experimented last year with VR, and then now VR is the hot topic. I think being at the forefront of all these things and just R&Ding them and testing them and making them and training your creators to use the tools is like part of the secret of the success of what we've accomplished. I think there's like sandboxes that we put the creators in, but we want to enable them to play. So we try to be proactive and not reactive, but it's hard when watermelons explode and get billions of views.
Yeah. Great.
Hi, I'm Rohit from Samsung. If as content proliferates, if it really is and not or, what happens to the content creators on the premium, longer form side who have traditionally depended on a diverse set of genres and forms in order to justify the required ROI?
So I think they'll be fine because they're the ones making money. There's no one's going to want. At least in my opinion, people are still going to want to watch stories that are longer than a few minutes and that are told by great writers and have amazing actors and directors and everything else that goes with it. And if you look at where you can take content and reuse it and make money off it, and whether that's selling in international markets or looking at windowing through different streaming services or even syndication, there's more long tail revenue against that to continue to make different types of stories and than there potentially is in a 15-second pre-roll.
Hi, Terry Sullivan from Consumer Reports. This is more of a personal feeling about storytelling and new media and new ways of doing things. My daughter, 17-year-old daughter, totally embraced the New York Times VR thing, Lindsay Adario's piece. I talked to my wife about it, and she goes, I don't even want to see it. So. And likewise with 3D, my kids were just, captivated with either 3D photography, 3D video. My wife's like, give me, Mr. Photo Guy, more prints. I don't have any more prints. Give me the prints from your photos. How do you bridge, the age groups there, with video, with any content? How do you, is it producing different platforms or different ways of producing them, or is it just about trying to figure out the best story?
I don't know that you also necessarily need to bridge. I think part of what's happening now with so much content, with the proliferation of content, is that it is hyper-targeted. So kids that are 10 years old are on Musical.ly, and adults are watching Netflix. And so I think the beauty is there's something for everyone. I don't think hopefully your wife and daughter will find something that they can watch together that they'll enjoy, but they will still have their own individual interests. And there's plenty out there.
And I think as technology evolves, you always see it's always evolutionary, right? It's always evolutionary on who joins what at what time, and some people are just left behind. There's still people who don't go on computers left over from another era. So that's always going to be the case. It's just how it works.
And I'd actually say that, though, that's also psychographic, not necessarily demographic. I think it's a choice. Mm-hmm. It's a choice of whether you want to be, forward in technology and embracing new things and being interested in VR and AR and all that kind of stuff. And some are not. I'm talking about the older generation. The younger ones will all be interested.
Yes, because they have to do what their friends are doing. I have a 12-year-old, so I appreciate this. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so this is the part that you didn't plan for. I wanted to do a little free association and see how this turns out for you guys. And I'm just going to go one word down and one word back. And just the first word that comes to mind. TV.
Old.
Snapchat.
Young.
Facebook Live.
Confusing.
Liza, iPhone.
Everywhere.
Video advertising.
Evolving.
OTT.
I want to say 2 words.
You can have 2 words. You can also pass.
Next wave.
Overwatch.
All right, I'm going to pass on Overwatch.
That one too?
Yeah, I don't.
Can you take Overwatch?
Impossible.
Camera.
Relevant.
Okay. You all get to answer this. The last video I watched online was... You guys are so busy making them, you're not watching them.
Oh, I watch them. I just don't want to say one that's mine. A Nike ad on Snapchat that we made.
Awesome.
It was a video we made for a medical company about pretty ill people, actually.
Did you? Okay, so this morning you watched this? Like today?
Last night.
Yes.
Okay.
That's mine too. Yours? No.
Ryan also watched your video.
No, mine was the. I watched this morning the guy, the sportscaster, who was really upset that the woman. Did anyone see the new? She stepped on his story about LeBron doing Space Jams. Yeah, you got to see this. It is.
No one else saw. One person saw this.
Only one person.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's great, right? I mean it. I don't know who made it, but they got great data. Yeah, no, it's a real, just a guy going crazy on the news. It's funny.
That's great.
Liza.
Mine's work too. Video on Red Nose Day, which is tomorrow. So you should all tune in and watch.
When you weren't watching your own.
What's yours?
Weather videos this morning. It can't really be 90 degrees in New York today, is what the last video I watched before I came over. So last year at this summit, drones were the big topic. We had drones actually flying around right here. And this year it's been a lot more about VR. Drones are kind of passe. There's like millions of them have been bought by consumers. A lot of us have them in our homes, maybe more than one. So in a world of VR, what do you think is the coolest opportunity there for you? For you as a creator?
Attaching one to a drone. We've done that. I think what happens when you enter that headset and put on those headphones is one of the most immersive video experiences like I've ever had, and I think it opens up emotion and empathy as like from an artistic perspective in a way that no other medium really has. So I think like really tapping emotion and empathy in a viewer on a creative level, and then I think the 2.0 of that is like the connection that technology will bring to like people across the globe as they communicate. So communication and narrative power.
Doreen, VR.
For me, it's really the more you can stress the human connection and really understanding the person. And I think that technology has the ability to do that, the more interesting it'll be.
Brian.
this is a more kind of tactical, I guess, answer. But I think what I've seen and liked best about VR is the access to something that you normally can't, and it's in such an immersive feeling that is very different than the lean back. And we do a lot of music programming, and it just seems like such a great device to kind of tell that and allow people to be somewhere where they normally couldn't be.
Liza.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has that potential fulfillment of dreams, right? So that that you don't get when it's in 2D. So I think it's the same thing. It's that tapping into emotion and really being in that immersive state.
Okay, so last question, one word answer. The future of video is?
Huge.
Doreen.
2 words again. Still happening.
Right.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, all of those things, and I mean, I think the statistics.
One word.
Oh, one word.
The future
Astounding.
of video is
Astounding.
astounding. Great. We'll leave on astounding. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Fantastic panel. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming and sharing your views with us.